What do you do in restrooms?
My favorite is a mosaic tile on the floor.
Okay.
And the smaller
why?
the mosaic, the better. Because it doesn't matter what the slip coefficient of the tile is. The smaller the tile, the more grout.
Mm-hmm.
And the grout is what gives you the excellent slip coefficient.
Right. Gives you traction.
It gives you traction.
Right.
Plus, the surface is at a half-inch tile. The surface is not as exactly flat between every tile. And it's, you probably have to look at a microscope to see the difference in height, but it's just enough to where it doesn't allow a slick surface to where you're going to slip.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Mastering Restaurant Revenue, turning restaurant dreams into significant profits. We're your hosts, Bruce Russo and Diane Armitage. 75 years combined of working restaurants from the design to the build to the profit centers that you house within and how to operate those as well. So welcome back, Bruce. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great. Sky's the limit. Today we're talking about floors.
Yes.
We're talking about the sky's the limit on floors in restaurants. Now, there are a lot of people who go into restaurants and they don't understand what to put on the floors and what parts of the restaurant need to have this kind of a floor versus that kind of a floor. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh,
yes.
Pretty important.
And I would think too that it changes according to region, humidity, snow, rain, all of that as well, right?
A lot of factors.
A lot of factors. Okay, so let's start with front of house. So typically, what do you use in front of house when you're in a humid environment versus a very dry environment?
I prefer porcelain tile.
Mm-hmm.
Carpet, it's hard to keep carpet clean. So it becomes a maintenance item, and we don't like to have restaurateurs have maintenance because they're in the business of feeding people.
They are.
And then, a lot of restaurateurs like the look of hardwood. There's a lot of engineered hardwood that has a ceramic coating that works.
Right.
That will take the abuse of the foot traffic in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the real favorite that's coming up is vinyl. And
vinyl,
it doesn't matter what check average it is. I mean, there's vinyls out there that it's pretty hard to tell that it's vinyl.
I agree. I bought beautiful vinyl for my house up in Oregon. I mean, and it looks and feels like wood. It is beautiful.
So it's just like anything else. It's just like anything else. The lower the price, the worse it looks.
Right.
You get into the market that we do, and it's $6 to $7 a square foot vinyl, sometimes $10 vinyl. But you know what? Once you lay it, I mean, like herringbone or chevron pattern or, and there's so many things to choose from. It's pretty much a bulletproof floor.
Right. For how many years?
We've been using vinyl pretty steady for probably the past 6 years.
Okay.
Because of the product quality is just, I mean, it's really exploded.
Well, and it's so durable. It's just amazing.
Yes.
And now vinyl is showing up in even high polish look and feel, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say you like using porcelain, why do you like using porcelain?
Well, porcelain takes the abuse. And with porcelain, you can do patterns that highlight the overall design.
Okay.
There's vinyls out there that you can use different color vinyls that create, you can do things with, but you're limited as to what. So like if I spec a 3-foot square vinyl, I might have a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch brass tile in the grout joint as a highlight piece. Or that might be a 2-inch piece of tile in the highlight. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot you can do with it. Because when you're setting the tile, as long as your accent pieces are thinner than your field pieces, it works every time because it's, you lay the field and you use the spacing, and then you come back and put the accent tile in it. It comes out as a great product.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. And do you tend to not use a certain type of material front of house if you're in a very humid or wet location like
Well,
snow?
a lot of restaurateurs love the look of hardwood.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want it bad enough, we asked them to sign a disclaimer because it's, the maintenance is so high. I can tell you the story. The owner wanted 2.25 inch reclaimed hardwood on the floors in the dining room. And, I pushed back and said, not a product that's going to have any longevity. Well, within 6 months, it was all buckled.
Oh,
And
wow.
he called me and said, you need to come out and replace all the hardwood. I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, it's all buckled. I said, well, how are you taking care of it? He said, we mop it every day. I said, it's hardwood. So I went to the restaurant the next morning, 7:30, when typically they start cleaning the front of the house. So the guy that was taking care of the floor, after he mopped the kitchen floor, he went to the dining room and he mopped the dining room floor.
Oh, no.
Now, typically they would dunk the mop in the water. He didn't even wring it out. Just as it was full of water, he started mopping the hardwood. So every day it was like he was hosing it with a garden hose.
Well, a garden hose probably would have been cleaner.
Okay, so I videoed that for 3 days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the owner's office. I said, I'm here to talk about the hardwood problem. He said, yeah, it's horrible. I don't know where you bought this stuff. You need to tear it out and replace it. So I played the videos for him. He said, no, that's not my guy. I said, brother, I got the artwork. I got the sign. I got everything there. I mean, it's your guy. And we tore it out and ended up putting vinyl in.
Wow.
Never had a problem after that.
Well, there is something to be said about training people on what they use to mop the floors.
Absolutely.
I mean, sometimes they'll mop those floors and make them even slicker.
Yes.
It's just
plus
terrifying.
porcelain, I mean, you have to have a program. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you use porcelain, it depends on the slip coefficient, but porcelain is not at the top of the list for good slip coefficient. There are some finishes on porcelain that are excellent, but majority of them, you have to have some kind of cleaning program. You can't mop the kitchen floor and have grease-laden water and then come to the dining room and mop the dining room floor with the grease-laden water. I mean, you're like spraying a level of slip oil.
Yeah.
I mean, but I know you're chuckling, but trust me.
I know, but it happens. I see it happen.
It happens every day.
Yeah.
So when I say you have to have a maintenance program, that's everything from soup to nuts.
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Now, when you're talking about bathrooms, restrooms.
Yes, restrooms.
What do you do in restrooms?
My favorite is the mosaic tile on the floor.
Okay.
And the smaller the mosaic, the better. Because it doesn't matter what the slip coefficient of the tile is. The smaller the tile, the more grout. Mm-hmm. And the grout is what gives you the excellent slip coefficient.
Right. Gives you traction.
It gives you traction.
Right.
Plus, the surfaces at a 1/2-inch tile, the surface is not as exactly flat between every tile. Mm-hmm. And you probably have to look at a microscope to see the difference in height, but it's just enough to where it doesn't allow a slick surface to where you're going to slip. After somebody's washed their hands and dripped all over the floor, and where do you put, where were the paper towel holders? Where's the air dryer? You know what I'm saying? So if the sink is here and they got to turn around in the blower or you got to think about all this stuff.
Correct.
We don't want them turning 180 degrees and walking 2 steps with their hands dripping to get to dry them.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to turn 90 degrees and have that towels or blower, whatever it is, right there. So the drips are on the countertop and not on the floor.
Well said. Well said. I agree with you.
You know,
Like
the
even just
upper,
putting the dispensers up in the counterpart, like, up above the sinks is a great idea too.
well, and there's new products out there to where the soap dispenser, the faucet, and the hand dryer, all 3 fixtures look the same.
Oh, nice. So you just move your hands.
You pump the soap. The next one is the faucet. You wash your hands, and the next faucet, it looks like a faucet. It's the hand dryer, and it's got maybe a 1 inch by 2.5 inch spout on it, and it doesn't. It blows the air just enough. The CFM of the air coming out of there is perfect to dry your hands.
Yeah, that's great. I like
You know,
that.
and another thing in the restaurant, my standard restrooms, I use the smallest sink I could possibly get because it's just to wash your hands.
Right.
You know, you go in these restrooms and they got a 21 by 28 inch oval sink. Why?
Right. What do you think of those trough sinks? I don't mean to get off with the flooring, but what do you think of those big trough sinks that they put in restrooms?
You know, it really depends on the concept. I mean, I've done them. I particularly don't care for them because it reminds me of being at an amusement park, in the restroom at an amusement park.
It's a very well put point.
You know, or like I'm in the restroom at a Walmart store or something.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't carry that. I mean, trust me, I go through a lot of pains to design beautiful restaurants because it's all part of my design, and it falls into the psychic side of the design because, especially a women's restroom. You know, if the women's restroom is killer, I can tell
She's
you
coming back.
when she's coming back, number one. But in a month, if you ask her a month from now, hey, what did you have when you went to dinner at blah, blah, blah? I don't remember what I had. How was the restroom? Oh, the restroom. Wow, it was cool. You see what I'm saying? And if the restroom is that top priority in her mindset, she relates the restroom to the name of the restaurant. And, 90% of the dining experience is made in the right-hand seat of the car, if it's male or female.
I hear you. Yep. You've said that before, and it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
it is.
Okay, so to get back to our flooring. Okay, so I love the idea of the mosaic floors in the restrooms.
Yes.
So quickly tell me what you prefer to put in the back of the house, in the kitchen.
Back of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, I'm going to name the brand because I've been with them since
lucky.
day one. Eco Grip Floors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a recycled plastic rubber floor with the slip resistant finish, and it comes on 4x8 sheets, and it's all welded together on site as the install. But the unique thing is the biggest problem with back of the house floors, first it's the slip and falls. Second is the water leak between the wall and the floor. So typically when you use quarry tile, that joint right there, believe it or not, the 3 days after it's installed, the grout shrinks and there's a crack there. You can put a microscope there. It's leaking 3 days after. I don't care if you used epoxy grout and sealed it 8 times. It doesn't matter. When the grout shrinks on that tile, it shrinks everywhere. So if you get 1% shrinkage in the first week, you got a water leak from day one. This rubber,
Correct.
when they install it, they roll it up the wall 6 inches. So the base of the wall and the floor is all one piece. There's no joint there. So you can literally plug the drains and fill it with 2 inches of water and it'll hold.
Yes, and it won't rise up the
No,
sheetrock and
no,
destroy your walls
no. All the
and rot
walls, the
your two by
sheetrock,
fours.
FRP, everything, interior of that wall is totally protected.
That's awesome.
We put them in the walk-in coolers also.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes
Because
sense. I mean, there's all kinds of spills that happen in there.
Well, not only that, there's never enough heat. When somebody goes in there and washes the floor,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't ever get warm enough for that water mopping to dry.
A very good point.
And the manufacturer recommends that this floor is not mopped. They sell a enzyme spray that you spray with a spray bottle on the floor and let it set 30 minutes and just take hot water with a hose and wash it down. And then squeegee over to squeegee. It's a brand new floor every day. If you follow their maintenance program, it's a brand new floor every day.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I just wonder if, there are people who, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the maintenance, right? I mean, you could put
Yes.
something beautiful like that into the kitchen, and if they don't properly maintain it, if they use the wrong kind of mopping system or whatever,
Correct.
you're
Correct.
never going to, I mean, that kind of a floor is going to last a very long time regardless.
I
But
believe
to really,
it comes with a 5-year warranty. Who in the restaurant flooring business is going to produce a 5-year warranty? I mean, don't
that's
quote
a
me
good
on that.
point.
You just call the manufacturer, Eco Grip Floors out of North Carolina.
All right. Well, we're going to have to feature them sometime on a new
Yes.
episode.
Yes.
Okay. So let me see if I've got a little bit. Oh, I do have a little bit more time. Okay. Let me ask you another quick question. So how do you keep slippage from happening when people are coming in with wet shoes? What do you do? What's the best thing to do for front of house?
Well, there's a lot of different ways we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, from the design standpoint of view, I like to have the logo made and recessed in the floor. But when I do that, I typically make it inside the restaurant, inside the entry.
Right.
So typically there's a set of doors on the outside, and then there's a air gap,
Mm-hmm.
6 to 7, 8 feet. And then another pair of doors that you open and actually enter the restaurant. We like to inset a mat, step down mat that's flush with the finished floor. So
Okay.
by default, here we go. By default, when the customer walks in, they automatically wipe their feet dry.
Interesting.
So
You're talking about the air gap or coming in into the second part of the second doors?
in the floor, we set a mat and it's
Mm-hmm.
recessed in the floor. The longer the hairs, the more it absorbs. So, we recess it like an inch and a half. And what that does is we set the mat flush with the finished floor.
Mm-hmm.
And as they walk in the door and walk on that mat, by default, it dries the bottom of their shoes. So like a leather sole shoe that has, let's say you walked in the rain, you got leather sole shoes. When you walk across that mat, it dries the water off of them, but although the leather sole is still a little wet, that actually makes a great contact and adds to the slip coefficient of the floor, because when leather gets wet, it gets kind of sticky.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually improves. The plastic soled shoes are the ones that are, they're the ones that you got to watch out for, like tennis shoes and things like that. But that's one way of controlling it.
Very interesting. And do you find that certain floors in the front of house, like right before the hose stand, that kind of thing, do better in humidities versus super dry? Like if you're building something in Scottsdale versus building something in Atlanta, Georgia?
A lot of designs. It depends on how we've got the overall design, interior design coming. But I don't mind doing a medallion and mosaic right there, just like we do in the restroom, because it's the grout. It's the grout that adds to the slip coefficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now
So
I understand why there are those.
We may do 1 by 1 tile, but the proportion of grout versus the tile, if you get it like in a 60-40 mix, that's a pretty good range.
Very smart. How'd you figure out that whole mosaic tile thing?
It's
Wow.
amazing, isn't it? It's things that work and things that don't work.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, you do it 600 times, you know what works and what doesn't work.
But that's why we got you on this show.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Because how many people out there are going to talk about floors in a restaurant? It's just not happening.
Well, but
All right.
you know, and what I'm about to say, I'm not gonna. There's people that design restaurants that shouldn't design restaurants, and there's interior designers that do interior designs on restaurants that shouldn't do it either. You know, there's good and bad in every business, so I'm not picking on anyone. You know,
like you say, a restaurant is a manufacturing plant, and restaurants are very similar to hospitals in all kinds of ways, shapes, and forms. And you've got to have that expertise in how you're dealing with, you know, the manufacturing plant side of it and how you're dealing with all of the clientele coming in and out of the doors and working their way through your space. So
but things like, you know, when I go in a restaurant and I see $150 yard silk on the banquettes, okay, that's all I need to see, because I know whoever picked the fabric that was the interior designer has never done a restaurant. Okay,
I'm not going to mention where I see that in Laguna Beach.
They're going to get about 6 months worth of wear out of that.
Right.
Now, when I pick fabrics, I don't pick anything that's less than 500,000 rubs. Okay, so 500,000 rubs, that tells you the quality of the fabric. So 500,000 rubs, it takes 500,000 rubs before that fabric wears through.
Wow, I wonder how they tested that up to 500,000.
They got a machine that does exactly that and counts
it. Just rubs it all day long. I'm the rubbing machine.
Because all fabrics are based on that. So
that's true.
When you see silk on furniture, that's a drape fabric.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, and although it may be the most beautiful banquet that you've ever seen,
yeah,
but silk isn't a product that's going to hold up to people sliding their backs or, you know, their bottoms. It doesn't hold up.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
I can tell you where I seen it is in a worldwide. How would I want to say this? I want to be careful. It was for a worldwide airline in one of their customer clubs.
No kidding. So it's probably, you think it's in all of their customer clubs?
Well, it was in the one in LA.
Wow. And that is a lot of wear and tear. I mean, you're dealing with luggage and people putting their carry-on bags on it and all kinds of stuff.
And
wow.
I mean, why would you even think that? You see, but you understand what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm not trying to point. There's good and bad in every business. You know, there's good guys that fix cars good. You know, and there's guys that don't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's great doctors out there, then there's other doctors are not great. So, you know, it's just one thing. I'm
glad we've got the great goat.
Oh, please.
No, it's true. I mean, you know, this is awesome. It's great information for these people. So
well,
I'm going to thank you again.
One thing you've heard me say many, many times, we all put our pants on the same way.
This is true.
Every day. You know, the best thing to do is stay humble.
That is correct.
That's my
and
quote
you are
of the day.
That. I like that. I think we're going to put that in all caps as a pull-out quote. All right, folks.
Amen.
We're going to wrap this up on flooring. And everybody, thank you so much for being a part of Mastering Restaurant Revenue. Be sure to join our website, masteringrestaurantrevenue.com, so that you can be a part of the community, ask questions. We just went through a whole bunch of Q&A episodes, and we've got more questions piling in. So we appreciate all of your feedback. And please like and subscribe at our YouTube channel, and share this with your friends. Share this with your peers. All right, folks, we will see you next week at Mastering Restaurant Revenue. You make it a great week. Thank you so much.
See you next time. Thanks.
Thank you for joining Bruce and Diane on this journey of mastering restaurant revenue. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps them deliver even more of what you want to hear. Until next time, keep refining your approach, stay passionate about your craft, and here's to your restaurant's continued success.